Hey guys, and welcome to the start of the relaunch of the timeline show, where I'm going to be taking in a fictional timeline and summarizing it, well, while pointing out the important parts of that timeline's history. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show and the Wizarding World history, shall we? So the first thing I'm going to point out is the ancient magic. The magic from way before the times that are depicted in the books and films. And even before the earliest magic we know of from the timeline of the books and the films. Magic that ancient wizards came up with, like from ancient Egypt or ancient Greece, wherever. But now we're going to get into some of the important dates in the history of J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World. So, without further ado, let's get cracking, shall we? In 382 BC, Ollivander's wand shop opens for business, selling fine wands. And it takes off as a business from there. Around the year 990 or 993, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is founded by the four greatest witches and wizards of the age: Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, who begin taking in students to teach them in the arts of magic. It's also around these times that the big rift between Gryffindor and Slytherin started over whether or not Muggleborn should be allowed into the school, and it led to the creation of the Chamber of Secrets and the housing of a basilisk, and the departure of Salazar Slytherin. And around these times also is when the Sorting Hat was created. Okay. Okay, now, on to the beginnings of Quidditch. This would have happened around the 13th century, by the way, when friendly Quidditch matches was started at like Quidditch Marsh, and which is where the name Quidditch came from, and they would start friendly matches, and the hunting of a golden snidget was eventually added to the game, which would earn the winning team 150 points, or galleons as it was at the time. So yeah, 13th century, around then, the beginnings of Quidditch. Around the year 1294, some 700 years ago according to Albus Dumbledore in the Goblet of Fire, the Quidditch World Cup was established as a friendly competition between the three magic schools of Europe: Hogwarts, Beauxbaton, and Durmstrang. And this would go on for quite a number of years afterwards until it was banned in 1792 after a manticore killed all the judges. Okay. Okay. 14th century. Now, a few important events happened in this century. Over in France, in around the year 1325, Nicholas Flamel, the future famed alchemist was born. Famous because he would go on in this universe to create the Philosopher's Stone. Around the year 1334, his future wife, Paranal, was born. Now, this may have to be taken with a pinch of salt, but around this time, Bowman Wright comes up and creates the Golden Snitch as a replacement for the Golden Snidget, which has become an endangered species, and therefore the hunting of which is outlawed in Quidditch. But he designs it to look like the Golden Snidget. And this is when it would then become worth 150 points to the seeker of the winning Quidditch team. The reason why that entry has to be taken with a pinch of salt is because, well, it's unknown as to what century he was actually born in. Okay. Okay. And also, around this time, if I'm not mistaken, St. Mungo's Hospital is founded by one Mungo Bonham. I'm only covering events of the wizarding world in the 14th century here. In 1402, Eloise Mintumble, she'll become important later on, arrives from the future and gets stuck there for 5 days. While there, she manages to wipe out the descendants of, 25 descendants from the future. So she manages to mess up the timeline. Good going, Eloise. Who is Eloise Mintumble? Well, you'll find out soon enough. Now, before we get on to the last bit of the 15th century, a lot of quite a few well-known establishments were also founded in this century. And those would be the Three Broomsticks Inn, the Hogshead Inn, I think the Leaky Cauldron Pub. Yeah. But now, the most important event in Wizarding World history for the 15th century was on the 31st of October 1492, Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington was nearly beheaded. And it was something like 47 chops with an axe, and it still didn't cut his head off. So it just was left hanging by a sinew to his neck. Okay, guys, now in the 16th century, I made this mistake for the 15th century section. In the 16th century, Christus, a dark wizard who lived in the time, travelled out to the North Sea and established the Azkaban fortress, hiding the island away So he travels out to an island in the North Sea, hides the island away, and creates the Azkaban fortress as a form of punishment. Um, well, because it is later used as a prison, and he builds the fortress on the island, and basically does imprison people there and tortures them. And this creates the Dementors, who become the guards of the fortress. And yes, the island during all this time is actually hidden away from the prying eyes of the wizards and the muggles, and isn't discovered until some 300 years later. All of this happens around the mid 1500s. So, yeah. Okay, so we're now into the 17th century, guys. Now, buckle up for this one. Because the main event that happens in the 17th century happens in 1692. The Salem witch trials. No, wait a minute. Let's not go that far forward. First of all, in 1603, Isolde Sayer is born. Now, she become a very important figure about 20 or so years after this, because she grows up to found Ilvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Yes, the American Wizarding School. And that happens at around the year 1623. After she runs away from her captor, her Aunt Gormlaith, and flees with the Pilgrims on the Mayflower in 1620 to the New World. That would be America before it was founded. And from there, she'd go on to found Ilvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, marry a nomad named James Stewart, and adopt, well, 2 boys and have 3 kids of their own together. The Webster boys, oh, sorry, the Boot boys. Chadwick and Webster are the adoptees. And with their family, they found Ilvermorny, naming the 4 houses after their 4 favourite magical creatures. And those 4 magical creatures are the Horned Serpent, the Puckwudgie, the Thunderbird, and the Hide Behind, I think. So, anyway, I might have got the name of one of those houses wrong. And now we jump ahead to 1692 with the Salem witch trials going on, and the entire wizarding world being forced to live in secret, leading to the creation of the International Statute of Secrecy. So these are the events of the 17th century. That we know of. And of course, in 1637, Armando Dippet is born. He'd become an important figure later on. Trust me on this. In 1707, the British Ministry of Magic is founded. And of course, its operations are performed under the ground in secret from the Muggles. They're still situated in London. And this is where the first Minister for Magic was sworn into office. And from there, it goes on a long and colourful history. With the creations of such offices as Magical Games and Sports, the Aura Office, and Magical Law Enforcement, and then there's the Department of Mysteries as well, which plays a very important role later on. I'm going to keep saying that until it happens. Okay, so let's just move on, shall we? Now, of course, in 1709, dragons were outlawed by the Warlocks Convention. So yes, this makes dragons illegal in the wizarding world. Well, there are going to be some people down the line who may contest that later on. Okay, now, those are the important events of the 18th century. I'm just going to throw in the 19th century here before we get into our main timeline stuff. Events of the 19th century include the creation of the night bus in 1865, also the creation of the Hogwarts Express in 1827 or 1830 by Ottilie and Gamble. And now, those are some of the important events leading up to where the timeline would officially begin, leading into and up to past Harry's story. So, without further ado, let's get to that, shall we? In 1881, around July or August, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore is born to Percival and Kendra Dumbledore. In around 1882 or 1883, Gellert Grindelwald is born. In 1884, Aberforth Dumbledore is born to Percival and Kendra Dumbledore. There's no way to slice this one. In 1885, Ariana Dumbledore is born to Percival and Kendra Dumbledore. Now remember all of these names because they'll be important, you guessed it, later on. Okay. Okay. Sometime in the 1880s, Horace Slughorn is born into the pureblood Slughorn family. Okay, now we enter the 1890s now, guys. An important decade in the wizarding world, as these things happened. In 1892, Albus Dumbledore enters Hogwarts as a first-year student and is sorted into Gryffindor. But he enters under notoriety as a Muggle hater for his father's actions. From in 1891, when his 6-year-old sister was bullied by 3 Muggle boys, and he went after them and beat them up, well, presumably using magic against them, ending up in Azkaban for the rest of his life, causing Kendra to move the family to Godric's Hollow, where they met Bathilda Bagshot, the magical historian. Now, of course, it didn't take Albus long to go from the most hated student to the greatest student to ever pass through that school. And on the first day, he befriended Alpheus Doge, who had dragonpox but was still allowed to become a student at the school. Okay, now. In 1895, or should I say now, in or around for this, in or around 1894 or 1895, Horace Slughorn started at Hogwarts and was sorted into Slytherin. In 1895, Aberforth Dumbledore began his education at Sherlock's and was likely sorted into Gryffindor alongside his brother, but had to live in his shadow. In 1897, Newton Artemis Fido Scamander was born. Remember that name later, because, as you guessed it, it becomes important. Okay. How many times am I saying that in this video now? I mean, come on. Now, in 1899, 3 major events happen in the wizarding world, and those 3 things are: Dumbledore graduates Hogwarts after sitting his new exams, Gellert Grindelwald is expelled from Durmstrang after he's caught practicing dark magic on another pupil, so that's where they draw the line, and moves into Godric's Hollow with his aunt Bathilda, and the 3-way duel, which kills the 3-way duel between Albus, Aberforth, and Grindelwald, which ends up killing Ariana, all occur in this year. And this is very likely when Albus ends up with his broken nose, courtesy of Aberforth. And also another thing occurs in 1899 at the Ministry of Magic, in the Department of Mysteries, where the Unspeakables are working on experiments to do with time travel. This is where Eloise Mintumble becomes important. She's the Unspeakable who uses a time turner to travel back in time from 1899 to 1402. Where what we've already covered and what I've dubbed as the Mintumble incident happens. And the ramifications of her messing with time resulted in one day going by in 53 hours. Like another day going by in 60 hours. And I think another day going by in 4. Well, they did eventually manage to bring her home, but she had aged the 500 years she had travelled back. Well, that's less than 500 years, actually. It's actually over 400 years. Anyway. I told you they'd become important later on. Now, according to the Fantastic Beasts timeline, Minerva McGonagall was born around the 1890s. But we're going to ignore that. So, she will become important later on. When her time comes. But I'm going to split this topic into 2 episodes of the show. So look out for Wizarding World Part 2 next time, where we will cover the 20th century, or the major events of that century. So yeah. But until then, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have us a magical time.